Hello everyone and welcome to Excoundrel's course on Wild Rift Math. Yes, we're going to be talking about all of the good things to do with Wild Rift and math. And I hope you're excited because you will get extra credits for liking and subscribing. And if you watch the whole video, I'm hoping you will learn something. Okay, that filter was absolutely making my mind hurt because the mouth wasn't moving when I was moving my mouth. Guys, yes, today's video, all about Wild Rift math. And essentially, we're going to talk about resistances, how they're calculated, talk a little bit about effective HP. These are things that I used to do in Vainglory a lot, and I want to bring them to Wild Rift because even though this is a little bit of a general guide, this is not 100% accurate. I haven't been calculating equations massively in Excel. It's supposed to be a general help to help you understand how to play and maybe make some better itemization choices along the way. I guarantee you by the end of this video, you will learn how effective a simple 500 gold investment in some magic resistor armor can actually be in terms of preventing damage that you're taken. You will learn how to itemize a little better as a tank in terms of should you build health versus should you build armor and magic resist. And also, you should learn some of the items that are maybe overlooked. Things like Hex Drinker, for instance, which are sometimes overlooked as a good defensive option for like marksman carries against lots of magic damage. And you'll also share my pain that we don't have enough magic resist options for mages as well. Okay, so all the timestamps in the description below. Again, as Einstein said, extra credit if you like, subscribe, and hit the bell. In the meantime, there is a timestamps for the too long didn't watch. If you don't want to watch it all, just want to get the information, it is at the end. But if you do that, you're lazy. So watch the whole thing. We'll get into it. First and most important equation is the reduction percentage equation. So this equation essentially teaches you how much damage you are reducing based on how much armor and magic resist you've got. And it's very simple. It's 1 minus 100 over 100 plus armor / magic resist. And that'll give you how much you're actually reducing it by in terms of percentage. So the easiest way that we can do this is by using Lux's binding, which has 70 base damage. So essentially, I should be able to calculate how much damage it'll do to the dummy target depending on the magic resist that it has. So with our formula, damage percentage is equal to 100 over 100 plus the resistance. So it's 100 divided by 100 plus 100, which is 100 divided by 200, which is 0.5 clearly. And that 0.5 is a decimal percentage equal to 50%. So Lux's binding should do 35 damage. There you go, 35 damage. Easy. If you want to find out how much damage percentage you're taking, you just take out the 1 minus of that previous equation. Now let's get into an important graph. This is the logarithmic curve of the armor and magic resist returns. As you can see, the graph is steeper below 100 armor or magic resist, meaning it is more effective to buy armor and magic resist when you're at a lower value because you're going to get a higher return on the damage percentage reduction. Let's take Lux as an example. Base 30 magic resist, you buy a null magic mantle of 20 magic resist and it boosts you to 50. You go from about a 23% reduction to a 33 or 34% reduction, which is around a 10 or 11% increase for a 500 gold investment. So for a little 500 gold investment, you can reduce all magic damage that you are taking from base level 1 by up to 10%. Which is pretty crazy when you think about it. That is a very big reduction for a small gold investment. Okay, so to display this, and I think give you the most poignant example, Lux, 30 MR, 23% magic damage reduction. If I want to invest just 500 gold, if I can get rid of this, invest just 500 gold in a null magic mantle to give me 20 magic resistance, it boosts it to 50, and now my magic damage reduction is 33%. So I had a boost of 10% damage reduction, a flat 10% damage reduction for a simple 500 gold. Even though I've leveled up to 51, leveling up even obviously takes it a little bit further as well. You obviously get passive magic resist per level as well. So the later into the game that you buy your magic resist, the less effective it's going to become. So you're going to get the most gold efficiency out of buying your magic resist or armor as early as physically possible, of course. Let's say I want to invest. I don't know. I'm gonna reset level just to put this into perspective. Let's say that I want to invest another. I keep clicking the wrong one. I want to invest another 400 gold and pick up a Negatron cloak, and that's going to give me 40 magic resist. Well, now I have 41% damage reduction. So we've gone from 23% to 41% damage reduction, which is a total damage reduction of 18%. And that is all for 900 gold. You've almost got a 20% damage reduction for a simple 900 gold investment. That is ridiculously efficient, which is in line with the graph that you just saw. And it is the same between armor and magic resist as well. So, you know, the armor works in exactly the same way as the magic resist. The earlier that you buy it, the more effective it's becoming. And, you know, the lower your armor and magic resist are, the more efficient the purchases of something like cloth armor, chain vest, Negatron cloak, or null magic mantle are going to become. And if we refer back to that graph, we can talk a little bit about what happens in the levels beyond. So when we have a look at this graph, we can see that there are a point somewhere where we kind of get an inflection where it becomes, far less valuable to start buying armor and magic resist in terms of return gains on the percentage damage reduction. In general, that value is about 125. I haven't calculated this specifically, but I've literally just eyeballed the graph, looking somewhere in the middle. And 125 is about the sweet spot that you want to be in terms of finding percentage damage reduction for armor and magic resist. Okay, so the reason I talked about 125 being a key number is that's about the equilibrium point on the armor magic resist graph. And the reason that's actually an important number is that, let's say you're a level 12 AD carry, your base armor, which scales on every champion more highly than your base magic resist, is at 80. So we're going to go ahead and buy ourselves a very classic defensive item for an AD carry, which is a Guardian Angel. Boosts our armor by 40, which gives us 120, which then reduces our physical damage taken by 54%. Which is in line with the graph that I just showed you, where 125 is probably just a little over 54% reduction. So that's a very, very normal item to pick up at level 12 in the game. Like, it's not unfeasible to say at level 12 that most AD carries will have had the option to go for a defensive item. And that is the difference. If I just show you the difference between not having a Guardian Angel in terms of physical damage reduction and having a Guardian Angel. 80 armor and magic resist is 44% reduction. If I pick up a Guardian Angel, it's 54% reduction. So we're still getting a pretty significant return in terms of damage reduction. So a Guardian Angel not only provides you with an extra lease of life, but it also gives you that 10% extra damage reduction, which, of course, if you stack that on top of, let's say, Ninja Tabi, which gives you another 10% damage reduction and a load more armor, you can see why it's really important to value resistances as a carry. The difference for magic resist, however, is rather stark. You don't gain as much passive magic resist in game as you do armor, and so therefore finding the correct itemization to prevent against ability damage, which I think is actually, more often than not, the main source of threatening damage for your backline carries, is a little bit more difficult. There isn't a good option for AD carries in terms of magic resist, apart from, let's say, Mercury Treads. So let's say Mercury Treads, they're going to give you 10 magic resist, which realistically in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot. And that's one of the things that I do think is lacking. Now, the one thing that you could pick up as an AD carry, or a carry in general, is a Mora Mortius, which gives you 35 magic resist. So let's say we're going to invest in Mora Mortius as our magic resist option. Let's say that we're also going to pick up the Mercury Treads because that is of importance versus high magic damage as well. That's now giving me 94 MR. I'm still only at 48% reduction. It's still going to take me a little bit more to get to that sweet spot of about 120. So there isn't as many good itemization options for AD carries, but I'm going to just show you the difference now. Let's say I get rid of those two. Okay, right now I'm 33% reduction. I'm going to buy even just a Hex Drinker, right? So I'm going to buy a Hex Drinker, which is 30 magic resist. And let's say I also invest in Mercury Treads for the magic resist as well. That's taken me up to 89. So I went from 33% to 89. And let's say I don't even bother getting Mercury Treads. I went from 33% to 44%. So Hex Drinker not only gives me a magic shield at low HP, it also reduces magic damage that I'm taking by 11%. And this is at level 12. Let's say we're level 1. And we're going to undo Hex Drinker, and we'll pick it up in just a second, right? So let's say we're level 1, we've got 40 MR, so it's 29% magic damage reduction. Let's say that we go and pick up that Hex Drinker right now. That's taken me from 40 to 70, and now I've got 41%. So that's a 12% magic damage reduction from just having Hex Drinker, and I get the shield at level 1. So you're going to get a pretty significant reduction from magic damage by just having Hex Drinker. So these are things that I don't think a lot of players consider, and how impactful they can be in the early game, purely from a mathematical standpoint in terms of reducing damage that you're taking. Unfortunately, mages don't have many good magic resist options. We don't have Banshee's Veil in the game, which is one of the biggest things that I think is kind of missing from a good, viable defensive option for mages. You could go for Athene's, but the ability power is a little lacking, and it's not always the best item. I have been theory crafting that maybe you could go Athene's on Orianna versus heavy AP matchups, because you obviously have that shielding capability, and that might be good when you're protecting a carry. So I think Athene's is like maybe a little bit of a slept-on item as a defensive option for Orianna. But really the only thing that you have as mages right now that is a good magic resist item is Abyssal Mask, and that's only really good on things like Galio. I don't think it's a really particularly viable item for ranged carries like Orianna, and that's one of the big problems that we have. I just think we're missing Banshee's Veil pretty massively in the game in its current state. There aren't good magic resist options for mages apart from Athene's, and Athene's is only good on mages that have shielding capabilities like Orianna. So now we're going to take a look at something called the HP Armor MR Equilibrium Curve. That sounds fancy, but really what it is, it's a linear graph that shows you if you were to plug your health and your current armor MMR, it would give you a good rough indicator about whether it is better to invest in armor, an MR, or health to increase your overall effective HP. We will talk about effective HP in detail in a minute. But essentially, effective HP is the HP that you actually have when dealing with a certain type of damage based on your resistances. Now, the limitations of this graph are that it doesn't take into account item effects. This is a pure theoretical example of armor and magic resist without, factoring in what those tier 3 items do. You can never realistically hit true equilibrium. It's almost impossible to do so. And you can never really balance armor and MR 100% for a game's needs. The other thing to take into account is, even though it may look like at the early levels it's always better to buy health, mages and AD carries don't have many great build pathways from HP purchases, maybe barring Rod of Ages or Abyssal Mask for certain mages that can use them. Let's get into an example with Dr. Mundo and we can talk about it in more detail. So the graph that I just showed you was quite old and actually doesn't necessarily apply in all instances. However, the theory behind it is good, and actually, if you generally follow that graph, you're probably not going to go too far wrong because it is relatively similar. That graph might move up and down a little bit, but if you're keeping within the boundaries of, let's say, plus or minus 15% from the edge of that graph, you're probably not going to go too far wrong. The reason being is that we talk about this gold health equilibrium in the sense that at some point, it is better for me to invest my gold into armor and magic resist because I'm going to get more effective HP compared to investing it into health. And at other points, it's better for me to invest into health because the armor and the magic resist that I've already got will be more effective because I gain more effective HP by increasing my health total. In the example with Mundo here, I've got Sunfire Aegis off the back of my base resistances. So I've got a load of health, right? So my base resistances are 90 and 65. But let's take armor as my primary example here, right? So my current health is 2,276, and I'm currently reducing physical damage taken by 47%. So if we just work out what our effective HP is, we can then figure out what would happen if we were to buy more health or buy more armor. So by dividing your HP total by the amount of damage that you take, not by the percentage reduction, but the amount of damage you actually take, you can work out that at this point in time, Dr. Mundo's effective physical resistance HP is 4,294.34, which is essentially an extra 2,000 HP by purely his base armor alone. However, clearly, if we were to buy extra armor, it would either increase that effective HP total by more, or if we were to buy extra health, it might increase that effective HP total by more. But the important thing to work out is at what point it becomes more gold efficient to buy armor versus health. So if we do an extra little experiment with some purchasing of items, we can also work that out. So let's say that I'm going to buy a single armor item now. let's say like a very standard armor item for Dr. Mundo would be something like Thorn Mail, right? It's 75 armor with a little bit of max health. Well, maybe there's one that gives me no max health. It'd be easier to work out. Okay, let's take Frozen Heart. It gives me 70 armor, but no extra max health. So let's purchase Frozen Heart, okay? So Frozen Heart gets purchased. Our armor is up to 160. Let's take a quick look at what that does to our effective HP. So by running that calculation through the same pathway, we get 2,276 divided by 0.39, which gives us an effective physical resistance, effective HP of 5,835. So by purchasing a Thorn Mail, we have given ourselves an extra 1,600 effective HP versus physical damage. Obviously not counting Last Whisper or any kind of penetration. Let's redo that, but instead we just buy flat health. So by buying a Warmogs, we have increased our HP total up to around... Oh, we've actually gone up a level here. Give me a second. We have to go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so we've increased our HP total to 2,976, and we're going to run it through the same calculation as before. And that gives us an effective HP total of 5,615. So it's actually more efficient to buy Thorn Mail than it is Warmogs, not counting the fact that Thorn Mail is 50 gold cheaper as well. But at this value, it was slightly more efficient to buy armor than it was to buy flat HP. But obviously, League of Legends doesn't work that way. Warmogs gives you ability haste, it gives you health regeneration, which is a more effective HP, and also it allows you to regen out of combat, whereas Thorn Mail is going to help you deal damage and also apply grievous wounds. So it's not always as straight cut as effective HP versus, gold efficiency of health versus gold efficiency of armor. But clearly the golden rule, and if we refer back to that graph, just in this case of Mundo, right? So let's say Mundo, I had 2,000. I had 2,000 something HP, and I had 90 armor. It was telling me to buy armor and MR, which technically was the correct choice. So that graph is generally pretty accurate when it comes to calculating whether you should buy armor or MR. I'll run another quick example now to check if the buy health option is correct. So I'll do that now. Okay, for the sake of this, I've now purchased 2 armor items. I've got just under 2,000 HP, and I have got 235 armor. So if I refer to that very basic graph, I'm under 2,000, 235 armor. It's telling me to buy HP. So if I want to get more effective HP here, it's telling me to buy HP. So I'm going to run that through some calculations and come back to you with the answer. Okay, so let's go and buy a bit more armor. Let's say we buy that gives me some max health, so I don't want that. Let's say I buy... I don't know, let's just say I buy the part of Randuin's Omen, a Warden's Mail. So I'm going to get myself an extra 35 armor. So I get myself up to 270, which takes my damage reduction to 73%, which becomes a 0.27. So my effective HP against physical damage went from 6,586 to 7,318. But let's say instead that I buy myself... Get rid of that. Let's say I buy myself instead... a Sunfire Aegis, or even let's make it a little fairer. Let's just buy a Balmy Cinder, which is going to give me 250 max health. That now gives me 2,226, which gives me 7,420 effective HP versus physical damage. So, as you can see, that graph is generally correct. It will give you the right indications. It may not be 100% correct, but it is a good thing to refer back to if you just want a quick idea about, do I want to buy health or MR, or do I want to buy, do I want to buy armor or MR, or do I want to buy health? And I've run all of these effective HP calculations through, and hopefully it will give you a good indication, especially when you're playing tanks. It is more important to think about this kind of thing. Okay, so the TLDW, my too long didn't watch. Buying armor and MR early can yield up to 12% reductions in damage taken for as little as 500 gold. However, as we discovered in the tank portion, sometimes earlier it is better to build flat HP to get you a better effective HP increase. Hex Trinket is good for ADs as a defensive item versus heavy AP options, and I think it's severely underutilized in the game. Guardian Angel is good, especially at level 12 plus, for hitting a sweet spot in physical damage reduction. Effective HP is increased through armor and magic resist, but there are thresholds where buying HP is better than buying those resistances. I hope this hasn't been too boring for you. I know math is not everyone's favorite subject, but this is a good rough guide and hopefully has taught you some things about Wild Rift that you weren't aware of before and might help you make some better in-game decisions.